The Hartford Whalers existed for over 25 years as a professional hockey team based out of one of the smallest markets in the NHL. In this video, we'll look back at the rise and fall of the Whalers and how a deal for a new arena fell through that could have saved the team from leaving Hartford. Before we get started, I just want to say welcome to All Sports History. This is a channel where you'll find many sports documentaries on sports leagues like the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, and much more. So please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell if you don't want to miss any of those. Okay, let's get back to today's video. In September of 1971, the World Hockey Association was founded as a rival competitor to the National Hockey League. This was the first time the NHL faced a legitimate competing league since the Western Canada Hockey League folded in 1926. The WHA began with 12 teams, which included a franchise based out of the Boston area known as the New England Whalers. The team's ownership group was headed mainly by Howard Baldwin, a film producer and CEO of Baldwin Entertainment. Apart from being the team's owner, he would also become the WHA League's president in 1977. Baldwin would retain ownership of the Whalers for the next 17 years when he sold his remaining shares in 1988. The Whalers' name itself is a nod to the maritime past of the New England area, but it's also a subtle nod to the founding league that they played in, as the first three letters of Whalers is WHA, referencing the World Hockey Association. Their first season was a huge success, achieving the best record in the league and eventually going on to win the WHA championship over the Winnipeg Jets. Initially, the team played games at the Boston Garden, where the Boston Bruins, Boston Celtics, and even the Boston Braves, a minor league team for the Bruins, played. The Whalers were fourth in line in priority for scheduling, which meant that the team often received unfavorable start times and dates for games. The Whalers' ownership group became frustrated with the situation and began looking for possible relocation sites. Just 100 miles away from Boston, the city of Hartford, Connecticut was about to open a brand new convention center and arena in downtown Hartford. Originally, the city was hoping to attract a basketball team from the American Basketball Association. However, the ABA never showed any interest in Hartford, so the city went to Plan B, which was contacting the Whalers to see if they would be interested. The team and the city agreed to terms, and the Whalers officially moved to Hartford prior to the 1974-75 season. However, the Civic Center Arena was still under construction, so the Whalers played at the Big E Arena in West Springfield, Massachusetts for the first half of the season until their new home arena could be completed. The team played their first game at the Civic Center Arena on January 11, 1975, and the arena would serve as the home of the Whalers for the rest of their time in Hartford. However, in 1978, a massive snowstorm caused the roof of the Civic Center Arena to collapse, forcing the Whalers to play in the nearby Springfield Civic Center Arena for 2 years until repairs could be completed. Throughout their early years, the Whalers were perennial playoff contenders. The team never missed the playoffs during their WHA years and won their division 3 times. This was due in part to the Whalers' strategic signing of promising talent and former NHL stars like Gordie Howe, seen here with a questionable depiction of himself on a birthday cake, and with the signing of his 2 sons, Mark and Marty, in 1977. By 1979, the NHL and the WHA agreed to merge, with 4 of the remaining 6 WHA teams joining the NHL. The 4 clubs were the Edmonton Oilers, the New England Whalers, the Quebec Nordiques, and the Winnipeg Jets, with 2 other teams, the Cincinnati Stingers and the Birmingham Bulls, folding completely. Part of the merger agreement was that the former WHA clubs would be treated like expansion teams rather than already established teams as it would be in a typical merger. This meant that the 4 new teams' rosters would be dismantled and the other NHL clubs could sign the majority of the players, with the exception of each WHA team being allowed to keep 2 goalies and 2 skaters. The 4 clubs were also slotted as the last teams to draft in the 1979 NHL draft, putting the teams at a distinct disadvantage than the usual expansion clubs that typically get to pick near the top of the draft, with the possible exception of the Edmonton Oilers, who incredibly were able to sneak Wayne Gretzky out of being drafted by another team, but that's a different story for another time. At the time of the merger, the Whalers were still officially known as the New England Whalers. This was an issue for the Boston Bruins, who opposed the merger of the two leagues because they didn't want to have to share the same geographical market as the Whalers. The NHL insisted that as part of the merger, the Whalers would have to drop the name New England and instead be known as the Hartford Whalers. Because of the new name change and the NHL merger, the Whalers decided to make a major update to their logo. The team used the Jack Lardis advertising agency to come up with a new brand identity. The Whalers initially wanted a simple graphic that steered away from anything violent towards whales, which was in contrast to their older logo that had depictions of a harpoon in it. Graphic designer Peter Good was assigned to the task and came up with several different designs featuring whales and a stylized W. One of the early designs that was actually picked by the Whalers front office was one that looked much like the Seattle Mariners Trident logo from the same time period. Although it was approved, this version of the Whalers logo was never used because Good felt that he could come up with a better version and offered to keep working on it. Eventually, he came up with the idea of placing a whale's tail on top of a stylized W. Since the two shapes were symmetrical, the negative space between the whale's tail and the W created a shape like the letter H that stood for Hartford. The negative space coincidentally also created a shape that resembled two downward-facing hockey sticks. The front office loved the new logo and actually had Good help design the new uniforms for the team. Joining the NHL and facing more diverse competition would prove to be difficult for the Whalers. Throughout most of the 1980s, the team struggled in the standings, and making matters worse, the front office started to develop a reputation for making bad trades. It would take 7 seasons before the Whalers made the playoffs for the first time in 1986. They faced their old WHA rival, the Quebec Nordiques, in the first round and ended up sweeping the series in 3 games. This would be the one and only playoff series that the Whalers would win while in Hartford. In the next round, they managed to push the series all the way to 7 games, but would lose to the eventual Stanley Cup winners, the Montreal Canadiens. The next season, the Whalers won their only division championship, winning 43 games and amassing 93 points. However, they would lose to the Nordiques in the first round of the playoffs. Over the next 5 seasons, the Whalers would make the playoffs each year, but again would be knocked out in the first round by the Montreal Canadiens twice and the Boston Bruins 3 times. The 1992 postseason would mark the final time the Whalers would make the playoffs while in Hartford. Heading into the 1990s, the Whalers were at a distinct disadvantage from other NHL clubs. For one, the team played in one of the smallest venues in the league, the Hartford Civic Center, which seated less than 16,000 people. Hartford was also located right in the middle of 2 larger markets in New York City and Boston. With the players' salaries steadily increasing, the team's inability to attract free agents, and how the Whalers front office continually made poor decisions involving trades. For example, in 1991, the Whalers traded 3 of their core players to the Pittsburgh Penguins. The acquisitions would help the Penguins win back-to-back Stanley Cups in 1991 and 92, as perfectly illustrated here in this photo shoot featuring back-to-back championship bullets. One of those players involved in the trade, Ron Francis, would go on to have a Hall of Fame career. The Whalers, in return, received 3 players, and none of them played more than 3 seasons with the team. In fact, one of the players, Jeff Parker, had a career-ending knee injury after only 4 games with the Whalers. All of these factors contributed to the Whalers not only struggling on the ice, but also struggling to attract fans. Over the summer of 1994, the Whalers were sold to a group led by CompuWare CEO Peter Karmanos. At the time of the sale, Karmanos promised to keep the Whalers in Hartford for at least 4 years, but over the next few seasons, the Whalers continued to have issues with low attendance and being able to attract corporate sponsorships. The team announced prior to the start of the 1996 to 1997 season that if they couldn't sell 11,000 season tickets, the team would have to consider relocation. Although season tickets were initially slow, a local campaign began nicknamed Save the Whale, which drove up sales drastically in a short time period. In just 45 days, the team sold 8,563 ticket sales, even with the Whalers increasing prices from the previous year by 20%. During this time, the Whalers were looking for funding in order to build a new arena in Hartford. The governor of Connecticut at the time, John Rowland, stated that he didn't want to use taxpayer dollars to pay for a new arena. Negotiations between the state and the Whalers continued, with the Whalers wanting a $147.5 million arena, but also an extra $45 million that would be used to cover losses of expenses during the 3-year construction period. The extra $45 million would become the sticking point of a potential deal, with Governor Rowland not willing to put up the funds. With negotiations breaking down, the Whalers formally announced that they would be leaving Hartford and look for relocation sites after the 1997 season, which was a rare move for a team to announce their departure from a city before securing a new home. The Whalers briefly looked at sites in Norfolk, Virginia, but there was little interest in a season ticket drive from the local community. That, combined with the fact that Norfolk did not already have an NHL-ready arena, meant that the Whalers would have to look elsewhere. Governor Rowland, seen here, and this is true, rehearsing dance moves to the song YMCA for a performance with the musical group The Village People, moved his interest from trying to keep the Whalers to possibly attracting an NFL team to the state. Specifically, he had his eyes on the New England Patriots, who were also looking to build a new stadium. Rowland offered to pay the entire cost of construction, about $374 million, and offered to pay the Patriots any leftover money if it came under budget. The two sides actually had a tentative deal in place that would build a 68,000-seat stadium right in Hartford. But the deal fell apart after it turned out there were environmental problems with the proposed site, mainly due to contaminated soil, as the location was home to a former coal plant. With the deal off, the Patriots owner Robert Kraft decided to privately finance the construction of a new stadium that would be built in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Sadly, the deal that Rowland proposed to the Patriots could have been used to potentially keep the Whalers in Hartford. Governor Rowland would later be impeached and convicted on corruption charges in 2004, and would again be convicted 10 years later on numerous charges of conspiracy and illegal campaign contributions. On May 6, 1997, the Whalers officially announced their relocation to Raleigh, North Carolina to become the Carolina Hurricanes. The name was actually thought up by the Whalers owner, Peter Koumanos, since time was short and the team would be moving immediately after the 1997 season. However, the team would play in Greensboro, North Carolina for 2 seasons while their brand new arena, the Raleigh Entertainment Sports Arena, was being built. Recently, the Hurricanes have started having an annual Hartford Whalers Night, where the team wears throwback jerseys to honor the club's roots. For one night, they also bring back the team's mascot, Pucky the Whale, and play the team's song, Brass Bonanza. Back in Hartford, at their old stadium, the Hartford Civic Center Arena, now known as the XL Center, the Whalers team banners and retired jersey numbers still hang in the rafters. As for Whalers merchandise featuring the iconic whale tail logo, it is still to this day one of the most popular selling items. In fact, Reebok and Fanatics have said that it's their top-selling defunct team from the NHL. Although the Whalers have been gone for over 20 years now, they are still missed by their fans in the Hartford community, but their legacy still lives on. So that does it for this video on what happened to the Hartford Whalers. What did you guys think about the Whalers moving to Raleigh and becoming the Hurricanes? And what's one of your favorite memories of the Whalers? Let me know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button and feel free to share this video with anyone else who might also enjoy it. For more sports history, check out my website at allsportshistory.com and be sure to follow my social media pages, which I've posted the links to in the description below. And thanks for watching!